Good evening. Hi. Hi, Natsuo. How
Hi,
are you?
Yoshiko. Good, how are you?
We're in almost the same place. I'm in Manhattan, and so are you.
Yep,
Like,
close now.
welcome everyone to the JUARA Wellness webinar. We're going to give it a few more minutes until people tune in. And we're also live streaming on the JUARA Skincare Facebook page. So if you want to invite friends and share, please do so at JUARA Skincare on Facebook, on our Facebook page. We're live streaming right now, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, we have a lot to cover tonight. A very exciting topic that's very, very close to my heart, cross-cultural communication. And you may be wondering why cross-cultural communication. Actually, the title is How to Effectively Speak Beyond Our Differences. What does that have to do with wellness? Because this is a wellness webinar. It is because our belief is at JUARA that connecting with humans is fundamental to our well-being and our wellness. So how to speak effectively beyond our differences in this world that is increasingly diverse, where so many people from different cultures interact, is really, really important to how we feel in the world. So hence, that is the topic of our wellness webinar today. And Natsuo is a renowned cross-cultural communications expert. We actually went to grad school together, and we've known each other for, Natsuo, almost 20,
It's 2020
20
years.
years.
Oh my God.
20 years, yes. So, and you know, we had projects together in school, but this is really, really exciting to have this reunion tonight. So thank you for tuning in. We could probably get started. So yes, you've tuned in to the JUARA Wellness webinar. And let me share my screen. Okay. Can you see, Natsuo?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay. And the title is How to Effectively Speak Beyond Our Differences with Natsuo Lipschutz. And a little bit about JUARA itself, for those of you who are here for the first time. We are a skincare and personal care wellness, holistic wellness company that is rooted in this Indonesian tradition called jamu, which has been around for almost 2,000 years. And it's at the heart of our brand. We believe also in holistic wellness in the context of community, hence the wellness webinars here where we bring people together. And we also believe in mindful rituals. It is really when we take some time to take care of ourselves from the outside in and from the inside out that true natural beauty shines. So hence our belief in mindful rituals. So enough about us. Let's talk about, about the objective of these webinars. This is a place where we bring people together to connect as a community. We started these when, the pandemic just started, and we felt like we had to start something where we could connect, because social distancing is not emotional distancing. You still need a place where humans can connect and talk about things that matter to them. We offer valuable content relevant to the times today, or relevant really always. Cross-cultural communication, for example, is always important. And we bring in experts, trustworthy experts that can really talk to each of the topic. We're also a platform for presenters, and we're offering an opportunity for people that have something to share, have a message that they want to get out, and also want to connect with people, because during these weird times, they may not have as many opportunities to connect to a community. So these JUARA Wellness webinars, it is a place where a presenter or someone, an expert, can connect with a community, with an audience, to get their message across. Okay, so officially want to welcome Natsuo Lipschutz. Natsuo Lipschutz is a global leadership and cross-cultural communication strategist. She actually has her own, she created her own consulting firm, Aspire Intelligence, where she consults global leaders. And I follow her on Facebook. I see her travel everywhere all the time, where she advises them regarding leadership, cross-cultural communication, because a lot of the teams in corporations are very, very diverse these days as well. But in addition to that, she is also an author of an increasing number of books. It's pretty amazing, and a public speaking coach. And we're going to talk about that later as well. In fact, she's working on a self-guided public speaking module for, people that are new to public speaking, or potentially even, advanced and really want to take it up a notch. So we're going to talk about that later, how you can, follow Natsuo for that. And for tonight, we have a very special giveaway. Like I said, Natsuo is an author of a number of books, and she actually co-authored the Success Blueprint, which she co-authored with Brian Tracy. And it is basically an architectural rendition of what success should look like. And it's a very interesting book. It came out, when did this come out?
2016, and this was my very first book.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
yes, I remember. It's now available in Japanese. We're gonna give away the English version. And so please stay tuned. We're gonna give away 5 of these physical hardcover books. Okay, so, and without further ado, let's start. I'm gonna stop sharing. And Natsuo, I'm really excited for everyone to hear your amazing journey from how you came to the USA. By the way, I also came here to, from a foreign country. So this really resonates with me personally, but I think everyone's going to really enjoy your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. So yeah, I was born and raised in Japan. I'm a Japanese native. I'm not Japanese American, I'm Japanese. So I was 20 years old back home in Japan. I saw a poster about this exchange program, and it showed the sunlight, happy students, and beautiful college campus with lush greens framing the Gothic buildings. It was like, wow, that's my shining future. I said, here I come, St. Louis, Missouri. So on day 1, I joined the dorm tour with my fellow fourth floor freshmen. And the student tour guide said, we're gonna take over the 3rd floor. And I thought, Americans talk so fast. But I followed them anyway. We ran down the stairs. Then everyone started going, what's up, what's up? Huh? That wasn't in my dictionary. I felt left out, and I fell behind, and no one even talked to me. I should have studied English more. I should have started even earlier. So as I dimmed my room light, I dimmed my own light. I refused to let my life shine and let myself fully immersed in a cross-cultural situation. So that's where my cross-cultural journey started. But I quickly learned that effective cross-cultural communication was not just about being fluent in a language. It was more about changing perspectives. So one Friday night, my dorm hosted a party, blasting music, beer bottles, pizza boxes all over the place. And drunk Americans talk even faster. And I almost managed to escape. Then someone grabbed my shoulder, and it was Nate, a surfer dude, long brown hair, big laughs, and sunglasses. Really, sunglasses at night? Only a lost surfer 1,000 miles away from the nearest ocean. And he goes, dude, where are you going? Don't be so antisocial. I was losing all confidence in my English, in my social abilities, and even in my decision to cross the ocean to find a shining future. I felt like a water-filled balloon ready to explode, and the surfer dude popped it. And I burst into tears in front of everybody in the middle of the party. What a party spoiler. I hated myself even more. But I squeezed out my last piece of courage to say, だって英語早いしわかんないし. He goes, huh? My English not good. Then Nate gave me words of wisdom that changed my life. So what? I was like, huh? But then I realized I was the only one who was limiting myself because I was stuck in my own perspectives, in my own little shell or my little bubble. So I felt, okay, he doesn't care what I thought was my flaw. So what became my mantra. So the next day, for the first time, I left my door open. Then people popped in and said, hi, y'all. And I knocked on their doors and said, konnichiwa. And fast forward 28 years, and look at me now, dude. I'm a professional speaker, y'all. Well, you may still hear a slight Japanese accent, but so what?
Right.
So, as we grow up in our own little bubble, we form our own unique perspectives. And we start to look at things through layers of lenses. And our values are influenced by family, friends, school.
I like that.
And work. And this becomes your common sense. And we start to look at things through these lenses. But especially in cross-cultural situations, we need to remove these lenses and look through their lenses, or sunglasses maybe. So the question is, what steps can you take so that you can communicate effectively beyond our differences? So that's the 3-step process that I call the 3 A's. So today I'm inviting you to explore with me the 3 A's so that you can break through your layers, your barriers, personal, social, or cultural layers, so that you can you can communicate effectively and produce remarkable results and thrive in today's culturally diverse environment. So first, I want to talk about culture. So Yoshiko, you're a multicultural person too. You're half Japanese, you're half German, and you've been in the US for a long time. And I'm Japanese from Japan, and I've been in the States for 25 years now, almost half of my life, almost.
Wow.
So but culture is so vague, so if you are to explain culture to your kids, let's say you have little kids, I have an 8-year-old, how would you explain culture?
Yeah, that's a really, really difficult. First of all, like, your story resonates with me so much, because just like you, I had this like, oh my God, I'm gonna go to America, that what brought me in as an exchange student, and it's really hard to define what culture is, but it definitely different screamed you in the face when you basically get off a plane. And I was in, rural Pennsylvania. And I was like, what? This is not, what I saw in Hollywood movies. This is so different, and
right. Yeah, St. Louis is the same thing.
Yeah, it's like, and so there, like, ooh, this is culturally different, right? But if I were to explain it to my kids, and we talk about it a lot because we travel, and they're aware of their multicultural background, but shared values, shared rituals is really what culture is and where I think manifests itself, right?
Yeah.
Because language, rituals, and values.
Mhm.
Um, but beyond that, it's really at this point I've spent half my life in America, right? So at this
Right.
point, when I go to Germany, for example, right, or Japan, I do definitely feel like, oh wait,
Yeah.
this is a little foreign to me,
Right.
right? So
Right.
culture is also not like static, right? It just kind of more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And your value system changes and shifts over time too, right? Because you're influenced by so many things around you.
Exactly.
Yeah. So um, you know, when I explain culture to kids or even adults, I want to say it's like an onion. It's multi-layered like this one.
Hmm.
Our typical pitfall is when you talk about culture, we tend to think about the country to country difference, like nationality, what you look like. All
Right.
Americans are like this,
Right.
all Germans are like that, all Japanese are like that. But if you stop there, it becomes a stereotype. But we're much more than that. Even if you're from the same country, same city, even same town,
Right.
um, you have your own unique values. So when I talk about cross culture, I'm not just talking about country to country difference, but I am talking about cross regional, cross organizational, cross divisional, cross functional, even cross generational, you know? And at the end of the day, you need to drill down to one individual values. So it's about value diversity, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah. So um, our goal today is that I want us to recognize that everyone has a unique difference and unique, we're all different. And that's a wonderful thing. And we want to understand how we can break through these layers so we can become an effective leader and communicator, right?
Yeah, that's,
And
that's such a and it's tricky at the same time, right? Because the national, regional, especially we think national, the national difference. So yeah, I think it's a striking a balance there where you have to recognize and understand obviously the national and regional cultural, especially between countries, right? Those
mhm,
differences. But then it's like you cannot allow yourself to stop there, right? And that I
right,
think is like a misconception. A lot of
right.
people where they just kind of like they stop there, or it's because that person is from a different country, or whatever.
Right, right. I mean, if you're an expat to a certain country, of course it helps to learn the average behaviors and thought process and protocols and all that, so that you won't make mistakes. But cross-cultural communication is not just about not making mistakes, but how to really um, communicate really effectively and understand each other. So it's about person to person. It's like the international marriage too. My husband is American, but he's so Japanese. And he's never lived in Japan. He doesn't speak Japanese, but his values are so Japanese, and I'm more American. So, you can look at people and see, oh, she's Asian, she's Japanese, so she must be like this.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, I can't think that way. So I want to introduce the three-step process, the three A's, so that we can communicate effectively, right? So you're ready for that?
Yes, ready.
Okay. So the first A is acknowledge. So let's imagine a huge iceberg, and let's say you're sitting on a boat looking at it. Can you see the entire figure all the way to the bottom? No, right? You only see the tip of the iceberg. But there's much, much larger piece hiding under the surface. And that's what the cross-cultural communication looks like. And when you don't know what's hiding under the surface, you could cause a deadly Titanic moment. For
Mhm.
example, in 2005, Soon after I started my own strategy consulting firm in New York, I met Mr. K, the chairman of this Japanese, very traditional Japanese craft company. And Mr. K was very experienced. He had his strategy all laid out, but he wanted to make sure that his strategy is going to work in the US. So one day he came to me and said, "You're hired." So I conducted an extensive research and analysis. And I said to myself, uh-oh, his strategy is not going to work. It's going to take forever. We need a shortcut to get into the market quickly. But how do I tell him that? Well, if I explain everything in details, he'll understand. No problem. Problem.
Uh-oh.
By that time, I have been in the US for 10 years already. So my communication style shifted. So I cut to the chase and explained why his plan will not work and why mine will. And I even supported my idea with a very detailed presentation, 50-page presentation, very logical, no room for argument. And I was so certain that Mr. K would thank me. So I attached my masterpiece presentation in email, put Mr. K in the recipients field, and CC'd everybody in the team.
Ooh.
The next day, oh, it's right. The next day, I got the shortest email from Mr. K. Just 2 words. Call me.
Call me?
And I said 2 words to myself too. Oh yeah. So I called him right away. And he gave me another 2 words. Come today. And I thought, he must love my plan. Now, if you came with me later that day, you would have heard Mr. K's voice cut through the air. No shortcut. And before I could say anything, he gave me 2 more words that I never forget. You're fired.
Oh my God. Oops.
So in just a few months, I went from you're hired to you're fired. So now, what do you think happened here in terms of cross-cultural communication? What happened? What did I do wrong, right?
Well, yeah, it's like, do you think you were aware that your communication style had shifted to not read between the lines?
No, I did not. I did not realize that my communication shifted. And Mr. K also didn't realize that I was more American by that time. He expected me to be a very traditional Japanese like he or his team members.
Right.
So he kept giving me 2 words, right? You're hired, call me, come today, you're fired. And that's the what I heard. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. And I was completely misconstrued what I thought. Why? Because I didn't understand what was hiding under the surface. So why did Mr. K say what he said? He was probably thinking, you're hired because I need you to reassure to my team that my strategy is correct. And call me in and come today because I need to talk to you directly about what you did wrong. And you're fired. Well, I got that one. Yeah. But he was probably thinking, you embarrassed me. You don't know your place. You're fired. So that's a why. The rest of the iceberg, I totally missed to see. So in cross-cultural situations, we face different values, thought process, and different opinions. Yet we assume that it's all human being, we can understand each other. So we apply our own familiar why, that's under the iceberg, to judge what we hear or what we see. But this will cause a huge misunderstanding.
Right.
And it could happen just, even between Japanese and Japanese. So I can't emphasize enough that cross-cultural communication is not just about country to country difference. So we have to we have to look at the culture of one individual, right? So the first step of the 3A is to acknowledge that they may have a different iceberg than you.
Right, right.
So now the second step is to analyze where the gap is and how big. And let me introduce you to a famous cross-cultural model called high context and low context by Edward Hall.
Oh, yeah.
So he said communication styles are categorized into two types: high context and low context, or culture of inferences and culture of verbal messages. So in high context culture, people rely on context. Um, and it is not even necessary or even inappropriate to spell everything out explicitly. So they read between the lines, and that's the context hiding under the surface. And there's a lot in the high context culture. So high context people, they read between the lines, or in Japanese we say 空気を読む, or read the atmosphere, right? Mm-hmm. So they read the atmosphere, make inferences, and understand what's in that context, so that group harmony and power balance and the sense of security are all maintained within the group. In the low context culture, though, it looks like this. Verbal messages are received at the face value, leaving no room for inferences. So it's pretty much what you see is what you get. And they tend to speak more directly, clearly, logically, specifically, which means tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them what you've told them. And they also tend to focus more on individual excellence rather than group harmony. So conformity is not as important as in high context culture. So this is what typically happens between very high context and very low context people. Low context person will be thinking, why don't you just say what you're thinking? You know, if you meant differently, you should have verbalized it. I would. So if there's any misunderstanding, that's not my fault. Why didn't you say it? And they may tell you that straight to your face. But high context people might be thinking, why do I have to spell everything out? Get the nuance and read the atmosphere and understand what it means. Don't make me say it. And that context may be all hiding under the surface.
Right, right.
So when you look at just the tip of the iceberg and don't think second about what might be hiding under the surface, you could cause a huge misunderstanding. Like me with Mr. K.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think also, speaking of how that doesn't just happen between countries, right?
Right.
Because you can definitely say like the high context versus, lower context, it's like West, East. But when you just have to look at when you spend enough time with one corporation, for example, right? Or even you can say like one industry, right?
Yeah.
How you adapt your language to say certain things or to kind of describe certain things, when to be polite, when to be funny, how inappropriate you can be.
Right.
And you start assuming that is how everyone talks, right?
Right. And that's like, unwritten rules, right? Everyone knows this is the way it's been done, and you're supposed to act this way, but it's not written anywhere. You just know, because you've been in that culture for a long time, and that became your norm, and that became your, common sense.
Multiple glasses, right?
Right.
Somebody new comes into the company, and they're, perfectly qualified, but you just something's off, and you wonder, like, why do they not know how to talk, or vice versa? It could be the same thing, but I think it's really just us as humans, we just start assuming, right, that our own perspective is like the norm. Right. And that's what gets us in trouble a lot of times.
Yeah, and also from a corporation standpoint, I think it's great to have someone brand new from a totally different company or industry, because that can be a you know can that person can bring a new perspectives, and that may lead to innovation, right? So some large companies um, hire chairman or president from a totally different industry, and I think that's when companies need to really change the way it is, or whatever the challenge they're going through. They need a huge change. They bring in totally new person, and I think there is a good reason for that. So
Yeah,
diversity, that's real diversity, right? The value differences. It's not just about you know uh, women or racial diversity, but it's about having different perspectives,
right,
and
right.
you bring something new into that culture, that that person can be a catalyst to create something better and exciting,
Right.
right?
Yeah. It's really about like it can be a source of stress and misunderstandings, but it can really push you, it'd be like the
Yeah,
stretch challenge and an opportunity for positive change. So
yeah.
it can
So you
be
need to have an open mind too, you
right.
know yeah. When you're in your own shell, you can't really understand the other person or the other culture, and that doesn't do good to you either. Have an open mind and acknowledge that, oh, they're different, and be curious about it, right?
Right.
So in case of Mr. K, he was using a lot of two words, right? So he heavily relied on context, which makes him very high context. But he thought he was communicating efficiently because if you are in the same culture, from the same culture, and share the context, then you don't have to say much, and you would have interpreted his context quite correctly.
Right.
So his high context communication becomes very efficient. Um, but I added my own interpretation, a wrong one, and thought he was excited about my proposal.
Right. Right.
I took his words at the face value. So where does that place me? Very low context.
Mm,
And I even explained my proposal in such details, very logically, very directly, very specifically. And I share my idea with everybody to be super transparent. So I was very low context. So now you can understand why I got fired from Mr. K. My low context communication was very rude from his high context point of view.
right.
And as we say in Japanese, I stepped on his face by telling everybody that he was wrong.
But do you think it would have been unreasonable, I guess? And this is the difficult question, but I mean, do you think it would have been unreasonable for you to expect that he might think about his own cross-cultural communication, how, he might be talking more effectively to you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I really believe that if everyone learns the three A's, or at least to learn how to speak effectively beyond our differences, I really believe that the world is going to be a much better place,
Right.
because we misunderstand each other all the time. And of course, learning the three A's is not going to be a magic pill. There's a trial and error. But at least if you're conscious of how you can improve your speaking or communication, I think people can understand each other so much better.
Right. The world will
Yeah,
be a better place, indeed.
yeah. So the big question is, what could I have done differently with Mr. K? So what would you do when you identify a difference, right? So the third step is adapt. So the question is, what's your adapting strategy?
Hmm.
There could be many different ways. What
Yes.
would you do? I mean,
Um, I would probably wreck my brain what kind of questions to ask, because you want to know, right? You want to
Yeah.
find, like, there's no way around. I mean, you can read books, of course, if it's a
Hmm.
certain culture, you know, national culture, or like certain industries, but at some point you got to ask and find
Yeah.
out people.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with you 120%. You know, we just talked about low context and high context. And if you're talking to a lower context people than you, your strategy is pretty straightforward. Just be as specific, clear, and direct as possible.
Ah, yeah. Mhm.
And which I did. But the problem is I was talking to a very high context person. So that's why I had a trouble, right? So with higher context people, you need to do a little more digging. Like you said, you can ask questions because they tend to have any information in the part of the iceberg you can't see. But don't misunderstand that it's not that they're hiding the information. It's just not their culture to not voice it. It's not their culture to voice it immediately.
Right.
So you need to help them help you. So one way to do it effectively is to ask good questions, not just any question, but good questions.
Because you don't want to offend people either.
Right, right. Like, if you ask some terrible question, you're going to make it worse, right? So, what are the good questions? That's a good question to start. So, the vertical axis shows the level of willingness to respond to a certain question. And the horizontal axis shows the level of insightfulness of the answers you receive. So there are four types of questions. Now, bad questions freeze the ice. Questions like, aren't you getting married? Or how much money do you have in your bank account? Maybe you don't ask these questions, but something along the line. These bad questions don't consider relationships, or they even have a blaming tone or negative tone.
I'm so
So
offended.
people are not, yeah, right? Like, aren't you getting married? Aren't you? Right? So people are not willing to respond to bad questions. And even if they do, the answers you get are not so insightful
Mhm.
because they don't want to answer these questions, so they'll just give you whatever.
Right.
So not so insightful. So don't ask bad questions. Then how about light questions? Light questions break the ice. Questions like, how was your weekend? What movie do you like? These questions are great conversation starters. These are getting to know you questions. So people are willing to respond to light questions, but the answers you get are still not as insightful because you're only touching on the surface level. And I see a lot of mistakes in business and not just in cross-cultural situations, but business overall, that people stop at light questions. Then
Hmm.
if you keep asking light questions, you're not going to go that far.
Right.
And you're thinking, oh, I'm asking so many questions and I'm not getting right answers. Maybe you want to rethink about what kind of questions you're asking, right? So light questions, people are willing to respond, but not as insightful. Then how about heavy questions? These are heavy. Questions like, why do you keep making mistakes over and over?
Ooh, that's just
Oh, right? I mean, people are not willing to respond to heavy questions because they hurt. And it feels like you're put on the spot.
right.
But if you have a trusting relationship with the other person, and or if you share the purpose or goal, then there is a good opportunity for deep learning for you and for them. But you want to ask questions that they're willing to respond and the answers are insightful.
Hmm.
Those are the good questions. So
Mm.
questions like, um, what three actions can you take to improve the situation? Or what skill set, what unique skill set can you bring to the table so we can achieve our team goal this year? So good questions allow them to think deeper into themselves and look for answers within. So that's why these questions get them thinking and talking. And it's not just a benefit to them, but you can also uncover hidden information, not just hidden information, but quality information, because these questions kind of force them to think deeper.
Right.
So you can pull out insightful information out of this iceberg. So that's the key for cross-cultural communication, and not just cross-cultural, in business in general, right? So just when you ask good questions, you need to do a little prep. So if I had asked a good question to Mr. K, the outcome would have been very different. So I would follow some 3 steps right here. So I could have said something like this: Mr. K, your strategy is very effective in Japan. I wonder what bottlenecks we need to overcome in the US. How can we receive your expertise on that? So there are 3 things I was doing. So the first thing I did was I made him feel validated by saying your strategy is effective in Japan. Because high context people need a little cushion, a little icebreaker.
Right.
But if it was a very low context person, I may just cut to the chase and get to the point. No chit chatting, right? And the second thing I did was I used some vague, indirect expression. I wonder, and I even looked away. I wonder what bottlenecks we need to overcome.
Right.
So what I'm doing here is adapting my style to high context, because high context people are more group oriented, and they also prefer indirectness. So if you look straight into their eyes, like really aggressive eye contact, they may feel, oh, that's a little too close, so I'm going to close my shell.
Right.
So that's why I looked away, and even made it very vague by saying, I wonder. So it's my question and not your problem. It's my question. I'm just putting it out there. What could we do?
Right.
And finally, the third thing I did was to ask good questions in an open-ended format. How can we? So open-ended format allows them, or kind of forces them willingly, to answer a little more deeply than yes and no question or closed-ended questions. So that's why they get them thinking and talking. But it's not that you need to be asking open-ended questions all the time. Sometimes closed-ended questions, yes and no questions, become handy. You can repeat or rephrase what you think you heard and confirm, oh, this is what I heard. Is my understanding correct? Yes, no. That's an effective way to talk too. But if you want deeper understanding, and if you want to obtain more information, you want to ask questions in open-ended format. That kind of allows, especially high context people, to gives them permission to speak up and speak out, right? So, if I ask these good questions, Mr. K would have felt well respected, and he would be willing to share his insights while I didn't have to do the atmosphere reading. So for everyone watching this seminar, after this seminar, I would like you to think about one thing. Think about one person that you often have a communication problem with, or challenge, I would say. You know who I'm talking about. And think about some good questions you can ask to improve the situation. So just by asking good questions, just showing your interest, or just recognizing that we're different and analyzing, okay, this might be the difference, so let me ask this good question that might improve your relationship, right? So Today, we explore the three-step process called the three A's. First, acknowledge the different iceberg. And second, analyze the communication gap. And third, adapt your approach. So here's a challenge for you, all of you. The next time you experience a communication challenge, instead of judging from your own common sense, can you remove your layers of lenses and be curious? Curious to learn more about the person, curious to see what's in that gap, and curious to find out how you can influence others when you learn to acknowledge the difference, analyze the gap, and adapt your approach. And of course, you may make mistakes in your analysis and your approach, but guess what? So what? Because cross-cultural communication it's a process. So keep practicing the three A's. And when your communication is guided by the three A's, you'll find that your result will embody a fourth. Amazing.
Now, I have a question, okay?
Is that a good question?
Hope so. I was just thinking about where a lot of people land, right, in those squares. And I think the like question, like you said, it's a lot of people stop there, and I would include myself there when I'm sort of like not sure. But okay, how can I move from the like question where there's nothing really wrong with the question, right? It's not like, oh my God, the bad question, but like, how can I move from the like question to the good question? I mean, there needs to be some form of homework, I would think, right? That you're like, all right, what's actually the deal with this culture, right?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I think, this is where my strategy consulting mind comes in. I think before you ask any question, you want to have in your mind, what am I trying to solve? By asking these questions. What am I going to achieve? What do I want to achieve from this conversation? And when you have a problem or a challenge or a goal in mind, clearly in your mind, when you're getting, some less insightful answers, you're not going to that direction. So that you need to shift your focus toward a different direction. So that way you can you can shift from like question to good question, so that you can get the answer you're looking for.
Right. Okay. So I mean, it's really about what are you trying to achieve with
Yeah.
What are you actually trying to, and because a lot of times, especially when it's chit chat, it's a little bit like you're just talking for the sake of talking and not really thinking what you want to find out, right?
Right.
No, that's.
But in business, there's always a certain goal, right? And something you want to solve.
Right.
It's about problem solving.
Right. Very interesting. The three A's, trying to get to the good questions, the good stuff, without offending people. So yeah, I mean, what's really interesting is that you, the cross-cultural communication was almost like baked into your bio, right? You came here as an exchange student, and through living here and working here, really like morphed into this expert of cross-cultural communication. But you're also a professional speaker. We alluded to that earlier, right? A professional speaker and actually a coach for public speaking, which is, and I've seen that, on your feed as well, when you get like awards and stuff, and it's fascinating. But I was just wondering if you want to share with the audience, like what made you add that to like your expertise?
Sure. Well, I didn't used to be, I used to hate presentations or public speaking. When you knew me at Stern, I absolutely hated. I absolutely hated presentations. But we had a lot of teamwork, team projects and presentations, and I would volunteer to take the shortest segment, and I would memorize everything, like 3-minute segment, and memorize everything, and I give my speech, and that's it. Q&A. Someone else, anyone answer. So. And I graduated from MBA, and I started my own company, and I had an opportunity to give corporate trainings. So corporate trainings are usually 1 full day or 2 full days. You can't memorize everything, yet you're in front of people and you need to be spontaneous. So I thought, okay, I really have to learn how to speak. So I joined Toastmasters. For those who don't know Toastmasters, it's a public speaking kind of like organization. There are, I believe, more than 10,000 or 15,000 clubs in the world. And then I started competing in speech contest. And the first time I competed, I was pretty okay. And at the end of a certain round of the contest, someone came to me, Janice. She came to me and said, "You have a potential, so I'm going to coach you." So I thought, wow, coaching is usually $400, $500 per session, and she's going to give it to me for free. Great.
Wow.
So in our first session, I totally changed my perspectives and I realized that what I thought was public speaking was not public speaking, because she pointed out that I had multiple messages, and I thought cramming all the messages in one speech so that someone is going to get something, that's presentation. But she told me to really narrow down to one big message so that everyone is going to take away the same exact message. And she told me that speaking is about connecting with people. It's not about you on a spotlight, giving lectures or, preaching something, but it's a way to connect with people's hearts. And when I realized that, I really started to feel, oh, public speaking is really fun, and it's such a dynamic process. And then I kept competing, and in 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer, as you know.
Yes.
And when I was diagnosed, it was the day before my speech contest.
Oh my God.
And two things came to my mind. First was about my family, especially my daughter, who was 5 at that time. And second thing that came to my mind actually surprised me. I thought, great, it's going to be a great story to tell.
Wow.
And when I felt that, I was like, oh, I think it's my mission to speak. And I want to tell my story, my very personal story that no one else can tell. Sure, there are a lot of people who have experienced breast cancer, but my experience is probably different, and how I felt and what I go through is different than other people. And most people are not willing to talk about it publicly. So why don't I talk about my story, share my thoughts, share my raw feelings, and that resonated with the audience. And when my message resonated with the audience, it bounces back to me. Like I felt like I was healed by speaking. So I often say speaking is healing. So my message could heal the audience, and the audience reaction would heal me.
Right.
So that's when I decided I'm going to be a professional speaker.
So it was really this search and longing for connecting, right? I mean, speaking is connecting, and it's mutual healing process in that process.
Yeah. This is probably misconception too, that You may think public speaking is about, it's a lonely place on stage alone and talking one directional, but it's actually not about nothing is one directional. You you give your speech and you get their response and you bounce it back to them and they bounce it back to you. So it's a catch ball. Maybe you're speaking and they're just giving you nonverbal communication, but it's still an interactive communication.
Right. We're full circle with, communication is really at the source of human well-being,
Yep.
connecting, truly connecting with people. I cannot agree more. And you've actually, since becoming a professional speaker and also coach, you've decided to empower other people now with your self-guided program.
Yep.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. First of all, before I'm going to talk about the program, I really wanted to, share with everyone that public speaking is it's a means, a tool to connect with people, like we just talked about, and it's fun. It's actually fun, and I really wanted to, share these thoughts and help as many people as possible who feel the same way. So that's why I started coaching. And also, coming from a strategy consulting background, my specialty is an analytical skill. So when I coach people, or even in corporate trainings, I listen to someone's speech for the first time in totally different industry, and I can still pull out their strength and their core message, and I can analyze their speech quite quickly. So I think that's where my strategy consulting background comes in. So I really love coaching people and building, stories and crafting speeches together for the client. So usually coaching is one-on-one or it's a corporate trainings, but I thought I wanted to share this with a bigger audience. So I'm about to develop this online program. It's a self-guided program, and there will be two courses. One is intro course, and the second is a master course. And it's it's targeted to pretty much everyone, whether you're a non-English native speaker like myself, or you work globally and want to communicate effectively beyond differences. You can learn from this course, especially in intro course, the 5 pitfalls of global public speaking that most people fall into, and practical tips, practical yet very strategic tips that you can start using today to make a visible difference on your speech. And if you want to further your learning, you can move on to the masterclass, where I'm going to talk about cross-cultural communications and how to connect more deeply and how to strategically place the emotional factors as well as the logical factor. So actually, I'm going to start shooting this weekend, and I'm hoping that the product will go out sometime in September.
Oh,
well, I said September, so I'm going to force myself to finish it.
I can't wait. And, public speaking is one of those things that, it's like one of the top 3 most dreaded things in like people's lives.
It's people's number 1 fear, as Seinfeld said.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And everyone kind of thinks that they suck, I'm not good at public speaking, but you never know. It's really, it could be really a matter of finding the right coach, just like you, Natsuo, like just found the right coach to groom you into a professional speaker. So, well, thank you so much. We are actually going to stay with us. We're going to share with you how you can follow Natsuo and also sign up for the list so you get notified
when this program for public speaking is going to be ready. So please stay tuned for a couple of minutes. Thank you, Natsuo. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Next week, we're shifting gears, okay? Dr. Sonali Sharma, she's a trained and practicing clinical adult psychiatrist, and she's actually practicing in Manhattan. And we're kind of going back to, you know, the whole idea of like, what the hell is going on with this pandemic and what's going to be the new norm, and how do we move beyond, stay grounded, and how do we move forward with our lives? So keeping a healthy mindset, it's very much about our well-being during this ongoing pandemic. So please tune in. It's going to be next Thursday at 8 o'clock, the usual time. Dr. Sonali Sharma, okay, really interesting. We're pretty much over time, so I apologize. Connect with us, okay? So this is where you can follow Natsuo on Instagram, on Facebook, actually under BT Speaking Global, okay? Breakthrough Speaking Global, says BT Speaking Global, and also on her website, natsuolipschutz.us. And of course, you can follow us as well on Instagram, Facebook, and our website. Most of you know this already. Also, this is where you can actually sign up to follow Natsuo specifically to get notified about the self-guided speaking program. And this is going to be the link. And conveniently, there's a QR code. You can just point your phone and get directly to the site where you just put in your information, and then you'll be on her list to get notified.
So get your phone now and then point to it.
Yeah, just point.
Do that now.
Thank you for staying with us. I hope this was valuable. Natsuo, it was such a pleasure to have this reunion with you after all these years.
I know, 20 years. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Hear more, you know, what you're up to. It's always fascinating to follow you. And thanks everyone for tuning in, and we hope to see you again next time. Okay. Bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.